Good evening, I'm John Carter and welcome to Poland Daily. Today, the Prime Minister of Poland, Mateusz Morawiecki, presented the details of a new plan announced earlier on by the leader of the Law and Justice Party, Jarosław Kaczyński. The plan concerns the extension of the 500-plus programme for the first child and a rise in annual pension payments of 1,100 zloty. Personal income tax will be decreased from 18 to 17%, and the previously discontinued bus connections to smaller cities will also be reactivated.
Today, the government presented a roadmap of Kaczyński's 5 campaign promises announced 2 weeks ago at the Law and Justice Party's convention. The first thing the government wants to implement is the reactivation of the bus connections to smaller cities.
The first bus lines will start to function in April and May.
The so-called 13 pension in the amount of 1,100 zlotys will come into force on May 1st. The first 500-plus program for every child will start in July. The personal income tax for people up to the age of 26 will be decreased.
When a person turns 26, the personal income tax will be decreased by 1%. The Law and Justice Party government has been decreasing taxes for a few years now.
The Prime Minister presented the financial sources for the new 5 campaign promises.
A reduction of the widely understood grey economy, a cashless fuel package, the export of refunded medicines, the amount of VAT, it already amounts to 60 billion zlotys.
The Civic Platform supports the 500-plus program and the 13th pension, but thinks other points of the program are just there to cover for the ruling party's problems.
It's easy to see that it's all happening because of Kaczyński's taped conversation scandal.
Despite the Prime Minister's assertions about the financial sources for the Law and Justice Party's 5 campaign promises, accusations about the lack of the money in the state budget have appeared. Kaczyński's 5 campaign promises will cost 40 billion zlotys. The most money will go towards the 500-plus program and the 13th pension program.
The European elections are due to take place soon in all EU member states. European politicians such as French President Emmanuel Macron and President of the European Council Donald Tusk are now warning against foreign interference and nationalist parties from ruining the European project. The French president published his vision of the reforms today, whilst President Tusk held a press conference on the issue.
French President Emmanuel Macron has made an impassioned defense for a new Europe in a newspaper column published in each of the 28 member states on Tuesday, in which he laid out his ideas for a European renaissance ahead of EU elections in May. His words are intended as a wake-up call for the bloc as he seeks to push fundamental reform of the European Union. Proposals include creating a European agency to protect democracies, which would provide experts to safeguard elections from manipulation. Macron also suggested reviewing the Schengen system and creating a common border police and European asylum office. European Council President Donald Tusk called on voters across the continent to reject anti-European parties.
There are external anti-European forces which are seeking, openly or secretly, to influence the democratic choices of Europeans, as was the case with Brexit and a number of election campaigns across Europe. And it may again be the case with the European elections in May. This is why I am calling on all those who care about the EU to cooperate closely during and after the European elections. Do not allow political parties that are funded by external forces hostile to Europe to decide on key priorities for the EU and the new leadership of European institutions.
Political parties seen as hostile to the EU have surged across the bloc, particularly since the 2015-16 migration crisis that saw hundreds of thousands of asylum seekers arrive.
The Polish Teachers' Union, PTU, threatened a teacher strike from April the 8th. This coincides with the end of the school year. PTU is demanding a 1,000 zloty pay rise for all teachers. The Education Ministry has responded with an offer of a staggered salary increase.
The date of the strike coincides with examinations planned for the month of April. If the teachers strike, it could have serious consequences for students who have upcoming secondary school, 8th grade and high school exams.
April 8, 2019 is the date the strike in kindergartens, schools and other care and educational institutions begins. It will take place until further notice.
do odwołania.
The head of the Polish Teachers Union demands a rise of 1,000 zlotys from the basic amount of remuneration for each teacher and does not want to hear about any indirect proposals from the Ministry of Education.
126.
The 126 zloty increase for trainee teachers does not solve anything. In connections with the above, this proposal was not treated by us as a way of overcoming this conflict.
Tego konfliktu.
Minister of Education Anna Zalewska told the TVN24 channel that whether the strike comes or not, all exams will take place on the scheduled dates. We are in a situation in which trade unions take responsibility for what could happen, the system that was put together with the unions.
Aren't you responsible, Mrs. Minister?
I am responsible, at a cost of 5.4 billion zlotys. Trade unions took part in the design of such an examination system. It is very robust and independent. The Minister of Education cannot postpone deadlines. Moreover, they are arranged in such a rhythm that it is necessary to access the results of this examination before the end of the school year. Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki appealed to teachers for patience and prudence in the radio program Sygnały Dnia.
I have this request for teachers to really give us an opportunity and wait for the next race, and then for the next one at the beginning of the next year. There are not many groups that will get 3 or 4 increases over such a short period of time.
The Teachers Union referendum asking teachers whether to strike or not is due to end on March 25th. The Solidarity Union is also considering a protest. The average gross monthly pay calculated on the basis of the Teachers' Charter and the Budget Act is currently between 3,045 zlotys for trainee teachers to over 5,600 zlotys for certified ones.
Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban's National Conservative Party, Fidesz, could be about to be thrown out of the European People's Party, the largest group in the European Parliament. Several member parties of the EPP have demanded Fidesz be expelled due to its campaign ads ahead of the European election in May. The ads claim that the liberal philanthropist billionaire George Soros and the president of the European Commission, Jean-Claude Juncker, are working towards transforming Europe and Hungary through non-European mass immigration.
The number of EPP members voicing their support for a vote on Fidesz having to leave the party group is growing by the day. A vote in the matter is expected either on March 20th or April 8th. In the latest ad campaign by Fidesz, Hungarians can read posters with the text "Brussels would give even more money to organizations supporting migration. They would help immigrants with bank cards filled with money, and they also want to introduce obligatory immigration quotas."
The Commission has unambiguous about our opinion of the Hungarian government campaigns that distort the truth and seek to paint a dark picture of a secret plot to drive more migration to Europe, allegedly.
A representative of the Hungarian government argues that the European Commission must be able to face some criticism. Both the European Commission and the European Public Life and the European People's Party have to be able to have self-criticism. Of course, we are members of the European People's Party. I think based on recent years, it is our loyalty which cannot be questioned in the least. But this does not change the fact that the past 5 years have been a failure from the point of view of Europe because of the actions of the European Commission. He also stated that the European Commission still wants member states to adopt a new law requiring mandatory refugee quotas for all EU states. The European Commission obviously is not telling the truth. In this concrete case, the European Commission should admit that up until this very day they have that proposal which suggests quotas on the table, and it's backed by the European Parliament. It is commonly believed in Brussels that Angela Merkel will have the deciding vote on the fate of Fidesz. So far, she hasn't made it official how she will vote, but she did express support earlier this year for Juncker in his spat with Orban.
All I can say at this point is that Jean-Claude Juncker has my full solidarity and that he will make this clear in our discussions with Hungary.
If Fidesz will be forced to leave, it's quite possible that a new party group containing it, the Polish ruling Law and Justice Party and Matteo Salvini's Italian Lega Party, will be formed and have enough votes to block reforms proposed by the European Commission. The European elections will take place in the end of May.
Thank you very much for joining us here this evening at Poland Daily. I'm John Carter. Stay tuned after the break for Poland Daily Weather. It's followed by the business, culture, history and the travel.
Good evening, I'm Paulina Ottersteinn and welcome again to Poland Daily Weather. Tonight the maximum temperature will be 6 degrees Celsius in the area of Gdańsk, where some showers will appear as well. Also Koszalin 5 degrees Celsius, Szczecin will see 5 as well, and Zielona Góra as well as Wrocław will see 5 degrees. Some showers will also appear around Krakow and Katowice. The minimum temperature tonight will be 2 degrees and clear skies will be seen around Bydgoszcz as well as in Poznań. And if we look at the map for tomorrow, we will see quite a lot of sun throughout the whole country, but some showers will appear as well, especially in the northern parts around Olsztyn, Gdańsk, Koszalin, Ottersteinn, Szczecin and Bydgoszcz. The maximum temperature tomorrow will be 12 degrees in the southwest around Wrocław, 10 degrees in Warsaw as well as in Łódź, also 12 degrees in Krakow and 11 in Katowice. And now if we check the upcoming 3 days, we will have a piece of good news for those ones living in the southwest part of the country. Also in the southeast, 17 and 16 degrees will be seen over there. And on Friday, a bit cooler, 13 degrees will be the maximum. The minimum temperature will be 7 degrees in the northwest. And on Saturday, 9 degrees in central Poland. The maximum will be 11 in the southwest again. This is all for tonight. Thank you.
You're watching Poland Daily Business Edition, and tonight we'll talk about foreign policy and its economic consequences. The President Donald Trump of the United States and the hereditary ruler of North Korea met last week in Vietnam, and the consequences of that will be probably some agreement with China on the business relationships between both countries, between China and the United States. And we'll talk about that with Jerzy Bielewicz, financial analyst. Sir, welcome to the show.
Good evening.
How do you think, will the end of March be the term when we will see the new business deal between the United States and the China People's Republic?
I think it should happen within 2 weeks, even earlier, from what I hear. And the expectations are huge. If there is a deal between China and the US, or the US and China, the financial markets expectations are huge, 10% increase on the stock market and good increase on the bond market as well, value of bonds, even high yield bonds. So expectations are huge, but for Europe it's good news and bad news at the same time, because if there is a deal between US and China, the next would be European Union and Germany, and automotive sector. On the Trump's table, there is this report on automotive sector and barriers that were created in Europe for American automotive products. So I would expect that tension and financial market should hold their breath, because there's still going to be trade negotiations. And just to compare, the trade between the US and European Union is about 100 billion euros greater than between US and China. So the trade negotiation between these two superpowers, economic superpowers, might have even greater influence on world economics.
Because the stakes are higher. To what extent Poland is vulnerable or exposed in this situation?
I think we can benefit from the situation. Surprise, surprise. Yes, we have an exposure automotive part sector, because we supply those parts to Germany. But we are still a low-cost producer. So if there is a tension, if, for example, there is a recession in Germany, we've got recession in Italy already, yeah? If there are more trouble in European Union and Eurozone, then our market share would increase because we are undercutting our competitors in prices. So it's not going to be bad for Poland because we have here our own currency, and we can be beneficiary of this commotion.
And our labor costs are still low, energy costs are comparable. Let's rewind it a little bit and say what are the terms of the deal with China? What China should do to get in terms with the United States?
What we hear, it's public information, it's Chinese promise to buy more goods from the States. It's a lot of goods worth $1.2 billion in 6 years, so it's a huge promise. It would, compared to what it is right now, it's $500 million, trade is $500 million annually from both sides together, yeah? So 200 more of goods bought by the US is quite a substantial, would change the balances, that's for sure. The key point is intellectual property, I think, in those negotiations, and so-called Chinese program, China 2024, because the US company would not be able to compete with the state-owned company on the Chinese market if those state-owned companies are subsidized. So it's about high-tech, intellectual property, and other barriers, not only custom duties.
Do you think that it is possible that China will float the UN?
Again?
Do you think that it is possible that China will release the exchange rate of yuan?
It looks like it's floating right now. I would expect rather fixing US-China exchange rates, some mechanism that it would be predictable. For China, the yuan appreciates recently, and on the other hand, President Donald Trump says that US dollar is too strong and US cannot compete with such a strong currency. So if they join together and there would be some deal between these two superpowers, they would probably include some mechanism for exchange rates.
So the Chinese, assuming that this deal will be done in 2-3 weeks, stepped back from their position taken last year. We know that Germany is very self-confident about their ability to compete with the United States. Do you think that this self-confidence will be there, say, in half a year?
I think we are witnessing right now very, very dynamic changes in, I would say, even a new world order. And I think it would be bipolar. One polar would be China and the other the United States. And other parties like Germany would have to pick the side. And I think in time, Germany and the European Union would play on the side of the United States.
We'll side with the United States because it's stronger and like more reliable partner than Russia or China, although we will see that in the near future.
But the deal between the US and China is very important for Poland because one of the I would say conflicting areas is South Pacific region, and kind of would be good for both sides if there is a land Silk Road through Poland, and the security on the Silk Road would be on the United States, as they are the strongest superpower. They would guarantee that you can trade on the Silk Road. We are ready to distribute Chinese goods throughout Europe. For example, our transportation sector is very, very strong, and we do 30% of transport within the European Union. So we are ready to distribute the Chinese goods. Not necessarily Chinese, because it can be produced by the companies that are controlled by the US capital.
Sir, thank you very much. Jerzy Bielewicz, financial analyst. That was it for tonight's Poland Daily Business.
Good evening, I'm Paulina, Ottersteinn, and welcome again to Poland Daily Weather. Tomorrow during the day, the maximum temperature will be 12 degrees Celsius in the area of Krakow, also in Wrocław. Showers will appear in the northern parts, also in Olsztyn and Bydgoszcz, also a bit in Szczecin. 11 degrees will be seen in Zielona Góra with a lot of sun as well. 10 degrees in central Poland as well as in Bydgoszcz, and the minimum temperature tomorrow in Poland will be 6 degrees in the northeast around Białystok. And now let's check the forecast in Europe for tomorrow. So the maximum temperature will be 18 degrees with a lot of sun in the Athens in Greece, 17 degrees in Lisbon, but some showers will appear there as well. The minimum temperature tomorrow will be -4 degrees in Helsinki, and some snow is expected there as well. This is all for tonight. Thank you and see you soon.
War and occupation led to the destruction of Polish cinematography, and the communist authorities began its rapid reconstruction, hoping to use this form of transmission for their own purposes of political propaganda in Polish society. The death of Joseph Stalin ended the ideologizing of Polish cinema and eased censorship. The communist authorities allowed more freedom and creativity into cinematography. During later communist times, cinemas enjoyed great popularity. Movies seemed to be an escape from gray reality.
In today's episode of Poland Daily Culture, we will discuss movies and TV series of the communist times. Artur, why did comedy play such a big role in those times?
Indeed, they did. It was a very important moment for our culture. And when it comes to Polish comedies, you know, Paulina, of these days, at the beginning, I mean, when I was as a teenager, when I was watching such Polish comedies, I didn't understand them at all. So when I was watching such Miś, teddy bear comedy, so the most famous,
the most iconic movie of
Poland,
actually,
of
maybe.
Poland, everyone I think agrees with it. When I was just seeing it on TV, I was instantly switching the channel, because for me it was just pathetic. How can people laugh at this? Impossible. And then after I learned a bit about that period of time and I started to understand this movie, then I can tell you this. It's a pulp fiction of Polish movie industry. And it's of course a comedy, because there are many surfaces of understanding this movie. So the top surface that enabled this movie to be accepted by communist propaganda was the fact that we are laughing at ourselves. But then it turns out that the funny things that occur in this movie can happen because of lacks in communist law, or another things that we are determined to do, or we are allowed to do, or we are obliged to do because of the communist era that we were living in. So there are so many aspects of this movie that make us laugh, just like in Pulp Fiction that I mentioned. So the English name of this movie would be a teddy bear. Miś. Every single Polish man knows this movie. But when it comes to another movie, The Cruise, Race, another movie about the situation, how a little bit of coincidence provides you a totally different life. Another maybe TV series, the one that I remember from my family history, would be The Four Tank Men and the Dog. So officially it presents the history of 1944 and 1945. So it's connected with the great victory of Soviet Russia over Nazi Germany. And there is a tank and there are 4 Polish soldiers and they have a dog over there too. My mother, with her cousin, 2 girls, were playing a game. Which of the women they were performing. There were 2 beautiful ladies. One of them was saying, I am this lady. The other one was saying, I am this lady. And then my mother had a brother, and who this brother should play in this game. There are 4 tankmen, but he was all the time given no possibility to be one of the 4 tankmen. He was always the dog, Sharik. And this is how I can refer personally to these moments. We were having an amazingly beautiful actress playing in this movie, Pola Raksa, and then even our music industry was about her face that all the people were fighting for. And if I can refer, let's imagine Kate Blanchett as a comparison. So she's nothing like our actress Pola Raksa of these days. So also very important moment for us.
And who else was very famous at those times? Directors or actors?
So another idea that comes to my mind is the life of the 40 years of men.
So-called 40-latek in Polish.
Zgadza, exactly. I wanted to refer to this TV series because it presents everyday life. And everyday life TV series were first directed in Poland in this in-between war period, and then they became crazy popular, especially in the US, and I will refer to TV series Friends, that we know so perfectly, that probably is the world's most famous TV series ever, and such things are happening in Poland as well.
Another one that comes to my mind is Alternative 4. It was also about everyday life,
exactly.
as I remember.
Exactly. So this is something that all of us somehow remember and refer to.
How do you feel the style of movies from that era was different from now?
I think that a majority of Polish people prefer movies from this era than our current nowadays movies. Because over then there were many ways of interpreting one movie. Just like the duck comparison we talked about before. So it was pretty difficult to think about it in the way that communist propaganda will agree with it, but people will understand the second bottom of it. So that was a pretty complicated thing that eventually looked so simple, and what's most important, it had to look a little bit stupid, so people would say, okay, they can watch it. And then we watch it and we say, aha. So this is what they want to tell me. And this is why these movies enabled us, Polish people, to survive with our culture, because we understood that there is someone else who wants to send me a message, who wants to tell me, hey, like in this movie, How I Started World War II. That's an amazing movie. And the main actor, he was just sleeping on the train when German soldiers were saying, okay, in 3 minutes, World War will start, and these are last 3 minutes of entire Europe to sleep well. And then these German soldiers hear a man snoring. So that's this Polish man, Polish soldier, who wakes up, who sees some soldiers, he just shoots once in the sky, and then he's bombing in front of his face, and this is how he thinks that he started World War II, that he started the entire conflict. So there were moments when, for instance, he's caught by a German soldier, and German soldier asks him for documents. So he replies that the documents are lost on the way. So the German soldier asks him, so what's your name? Grzegorz Brzęczyszczykiewicz. And this is how, of course, it's very difficult for every single person on planet Earth to repeat or even write it down. And this is how we are able to make jokes in a very difficult moment for us. And then there is this moment when he escapes from one place to another, and he wants to get a rifle. He wants to get a gun to fight. And he looks, he's like, he fades away with his dreams, and he says that he will travel to entire end of planet Earth to find his rifle to fight. And in his speech, he refers to World War II situation, but we understand that he referred to the communist era when this movie was made. And we, watching this movie, understand that he wants to fight for the real Polish independence. So people with experience who could understand the second bottom of it could understand it. And this is why movies of this era are so important for us till nowadays.
So that's why we all should go back and listen and watch the TV series and movies of those times. Thank you very much, Artur.
Yes, of course, let's do it. Why not?
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are here at the reenactment of one of the most historical battles that took place in Poland. The battle known as Olszynka Grochowska took place 188 years ago, and it was what ultimately stopped the Russians from taking over Warsaw. In the year 1795, Poland was partitioned by three of its neighbors, Russia, Prussia, and Austria. They were wiped out of the map of Europe, but almost 30 years later, they rise up against the Russian forces in what otherwise known as the November Uprising. Thanks to this very battle, the Poles managed to stop the Russians from invading Warsaw, taking over the capital, and potentially spare the lives of thousands of civilians.
Many Poles fought on the side of France during the Napoleonic Wars. As a result, the French set up a semi-independent state called the Duchy of Warsaw in 1807. After Napoleon's defeat at Waterloo and the 1815 Congress of Vienna, Russia took control over Warsaw again. However, one of the provisions of the Congress of Vienna stipulated that the semi-autonomous status of the Duchy of Warsaw would remain in the new Russian satellite state known as the Congress Kingdom. The Polish Congress Kingdom was allowed to have its own constitution, one of the most liberal in Europe of the time. But a couple of years after the Vienna Congress, the Russian Tsar started ignoring the constitution. As a consequence, the Poles decided to revolt against the Russian Empire in 1830, an event which became known as the November Uprising.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Poland Daily History. Today we are on the historical site of the reenactment of the battle on Olszynka Grochowska with the founder of these monuments that we are seeing right now, and
Andrzej,
Mr. Andrzej Melak. So can you tell us what are the significance of this battle and what are the effects, what are the events that took place
Bitwa pod Olszynką Grochowską była jedną z najważniejszych bitew powstania.
The Battle of Olszynka-Grochowska was one of the most important battles during the November Uprising. The Poles who fought in this battle were the descendants of the soldiers who had fought under Tadeusz Kościuszko and Kazimierz Pułaski. They were the descendants of the men who had fought against Prussia and primarily Russia in 1794 when our country was partitioned.
Że walka o niepodległość, o wolność ojczyzny.
This battle contributed to the fact that the struggle for national sovereignty is the greatest duty for all real Poles, and this has lasted until our days. It has become an indisputable tradition that the legend of the November Uprising became an inspiration for all of Europe.
Była natchnieniem dla całej Europy. Dzięki powstaniu listopadowemu.
Thanks to the November Uprising, the Kingdom of Belgium managed to remain as an independent state. This was possible as the Russian Tsar planned to use the Polish army to quell the declaration of independence of the Belgians, but his plan failed due to the Polish army rising up against Russia in the November Uprising. So, the November Uprising does not only concern Poland, but also many other parts of Europe and even the world. The Battle of Olszynka-Grochowska showed that even the mightiest of empires, such as the Russian Empire, can't go unpunished when the Poles feel the desire for freedom and are brave and willing enough to go into battle for it. Here on Olszynka-Grochowska, the Poles faced off against a military force twice their own size. Here, the Poles put on the field their most skilled military formation, and in the course of more than 8-hour-long battle, 17,000 Russian and Polish soldiers died.
17,000 napastników i obrońców.
The Battle of Olszynka-Grochowska is truly a Polish Thermopylae, the famous ancient battle in which the Spartan soldiers bravely fought against a much larger Persian army. This is why this piece of land, Olszynka-Grochowska, is sacred ground for us Warsawians and Poles. This is why I think that, following the example of Waterloo, we should build a mound here more than 50 meters high.
I powinno być wzorem.
It would serve to remind people about the great Polish victory and the sacrifice made by our soldiers here, as well as about the values they had, which motivated their decision to stand up and fight. It's also worth reminding people that a Polish general was killed in this battle. His name was Franciszek Rzymirski.
Franciszek Rzymirski.
The November Uprising wasn't the last time the Poles would wage war with Russia. A little more than 30 years after the November Uprising had ended, an even larger revolt against the Russian took place. The 1863 to 1864 January Uprising lasted even longer and involved larger forces in the field. In 1919, only a year after Poland regained independence following the end of the First World War, Poland found itself again fighting a war for its survival against Bolshevik Russia. We will ask Mr. Melak whether he believes that the memory of the November Uprising was still vivid in the minds of Polish soldiers in later conflicts with Russia.
So in the future conflicts within the Russian and the Poles, are like, for example, the one in the 1920, are these battles still being remembered?
Więc ta bitwa, jak wszystkie powstania,
This battle, as with all our uprisings, or at least the ones which were later defeated, planted a seed for future resistance. The policies of the Russian Empire, heavily focusing on an attempt at Russification of the Polish nation. It tried to imprison us and use us in the most disgraceful ways. Their actions resulted in such a situation that the memory of the November Uprising had an immense influence on the next generation of Poles growing up. 30 years after the November Uprising, meaning about a generation later, the January Uprising was launched against the Russian Empire. It lasted more than a year and a half.
trwało ponad 1,5 roku. 200,000
200,000 Poles took up arms against the 400,000 men strong Russians at some point of that uprising. The tradition of the November Uprising was also alive and well 100 years ago, when Poland was in the process of regaining its independence following the end of the First World War.
Mieliśmy 100 lat temu niepodległość. Szwajcarzy.
In Switzerland, they adopted the doctrine of the November Uprising as their own doctrine of national defense, something which they have preserved until our days. The Germans and Russians were also inspired by it and studied it closely. They did so because the Polish ability to form underground resistance groups, independent of the presence of the occupying forces on our territory, was recognized as a phenomenon on a world scale. Thanks to the national uprisings, Poland never really lost the will and urge for freedom, and that freedom would be later achieved in just that way, through armed struggle.
I ochoty na wolność, którą w sumie wywalczyliśmy.
As we can observe, the memories of the historical battles are still kept alive and well, even centuries after the battles have taken place. Clearly, the struggle for national sovereignty is still a key value within the Polish collective memory. That's it for today. I'm your host, Benjamin Lee. I'll see you next time on Poland Daily History.
Hello and welcome back to Poland Daily Travel. We're glad you tuned in. Well, we're glad you're watching us on YouTube. Lots of stuff to see. Your best source for travel information about Poland. We'll be venturing forth soon to exciting sites around Poland and nearby. But today we're in Warsaw and we're focusing on the Warsaw Old Town. We start at St. Anna's Church and talk about its significance and how Poland saved Europe twice. That's right, count it, twice. We'll be looking at some of the secrets of the old town, some of the stories and vignettes, and just two guys going for a walk on a sunny day. So stay with us on Poland Daily Travel. We're really glad you tuned in, because why do we do this? We do it for you. Stay with us. Okay, we're back with Poland Daily. Welcome to the show. We are in St. Anna's Church for this episode, still here, and we are in the Polish Military Memorial Room. And we're going to talk a little bit about some of the important battles in Polish military history, and then some of the important people who figured in those battles. Arthur, take us through the history of these battles, please.
So many battles in Polish history, always located in the central section of Europe, in between East and West, Germany and Russia, North and South, Sweden and Ottoman Empire. And first important battle in our history in Cedynia took place in 972 against German forces. And after this
Teutonic Knights? Or
Teutonic Knights, not yet.
Not yet.
These were troops of Brandenburgia over there.
Okay.
And then there was a moment in year 1000 when our relations got really good. Our King Bolesław Chrobry had such good relations with a ruler of Germany that during one party the King of Germany was putting his crown on Bolesław Chrobry's head and they were exchanging gifts over then, but this situation lasted for only 2 years. Then we had many more wars, and another very important one against Teutonic Knights, indeed, Grunwald 1410.
Grunwald is perhaps the most celebrated of Polish battles.
All the Polish people, starting from hate of this, know about Grunwald battle, which was a moment when we answered the question if it's Teutonic Knights, if it's Prussia developing in this part of the world, or Poland. And Polish king Jagiełło proved the domination of Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth this way, giving a possibility to develop Polish-Lithuania thing in here. Everyone in Europe was shocked. It was one of biggest battles of these days. 30,000 troops against 30,000 troops. So these were really big numbers in early 1400s. We are having another battles named in here. We are having Kirchholm, 1605, when Polish 3,000 hussars defeated 11,000 Swedish troops. Out of 3,000 hussars, 100 died. Out of 11,000 Swedish troops, 9,000 died. So we are having an amazing power of Polish hussars in these days.
These were cavalry, of course, the famous cavalry.
Exactly.
Cavalry.
Yes, with these pikes. They were curved inside, empty inside, attached to the metal handle of the horse, and when a hussar was charging, the wooden wings attached to his back were clapping, giving a very big sound that enemy didn't hear before. And the pikes were so long that one pike could kill first, second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth person standing in a row killed with one pike, if there was infantry standing in front of the hussar. So their efficiency was amazing. They proved it later on in Kłuszyn, 1610, which was a moment when Polish troops...
And later in Vienna as well.
And later in Vienna.
Are we coming to that battle?
Of course, 1683. Turning point in European history. Ottoman Empire developing on European continent ever since 15th century when they conquered Greece. Then Budapest, we know, if you visited St. Matthias Church, you get to know that it was a Muslim church for 183 years. If you visited Acropolis, you know that there was a Parthenon, was a Muslim church for 300 years. And then you visit Vienna, you go on Kahlenberg Mountain, where Polish King Sobieski III defeated Ottoman troops, and for this he was personally blessed by the Pope. For this we are having Polish property, Polish church on Kahlenberg Mountain in Vienna at the moment now. And this is a moment when citizens of Vienna were calling Polish king our king, because Leopold I, king of Austrian Empire, escaped from the city dressed up as a woman. And you have a painting of this in Vatican Chamber Museum. And this is where all this history is confirmed.
Is there another battle? What's the next one?
What's the next battle in here? We are having two more battles in here of Mokra and Komarów. Komarów was first, it was 1920. It was a battle against the Bolshevik army. Hey, Bolsheviks wanted to conquer weak Europe after World War I. They thought we would just cross Poland. How can it be that this country that just got back theirs independence will...
Poland was just newly created, as we said before in previous episodes, in 1919 at the Paris Treaty Talks, and existed again. So what happened was, this is a famous, part of this was the miracle on the Vistula, or the campaign.
That's the one.
That's the one?
The miracle at Vistula River. Yeah. The moment when Polish, just united by Marshal Józef Piłsudski army, stands in front of Russian Empire, and we stopped them. Poland got some lands from Russia in these days, just 100 years ago exactly. Yeah. Polish-Russian war won by Poland.
It's incredible. It is a miracle if you read extensively about it. It's one of the most incredible battles. What about the last one?
The last one at the city of Mokra. So 1st of September 1939, Poland is invaded by German troops.
Germany invaded Poland. Poland did not invade Germany. I want to make sure that we...
The first attack out of the blue took place at 4 a.m. In the city of Westerplatte. Poland was attacked by German destroyer, and this is how World War II started for us, out of the blue. It turned out that Russians knew about it. It was Ribbentrop-Molotov Pact. Russians attacked us at 17th of September 1939, and we were the only one standing.
It's important that people understand that one of the reasons we're here and we're talking about this is that Poland was attacked, stood alone against the Soviet Union, and Nazi Germany when no one else had come to their aid, not Britain, not France, not anyone, not the United States, who came in much later to the war and was very far away in those days, 100 years ago. That's why we're here, to talk about how Poland has consistently defended itself, and often Europe itself, particularly in Vienna, under Jan Sobieski, 1685, where they stopped the Ottoman invasion of Europe, and then, as you said, stopping the Bolshevik invasion. So Poland twice has almost miraculously saved Europe from invasion of people who had quite different intentions than to preserve Western civilization. And standing in this church, we have a great example of Western civilization, its art and architecture. We're in Santa Anna's Church, and we're going to talk about some of the military heroes that relate to these battles that we just, Arthur and I, talked about. Stick with us. Poland Daily Travel. Hey, we talk about history, culture, we talk about everything. And we like to go for long walks. Stay with us.